So this is a review of the exercise session that I did on cardiovascular endurance. So I did a cardiovascular endurance session through a fartlek training where the participants did a variation of their speed in a continuous exercise to work on the endurance. It really worked well because the participants said that the kind of key area that they felt they'd worked on was their endurance, so that was really successful. It was a really relevant session because the parkour that I had done beforehand, asking the kind of things that they felt necessary to do and what they wanted to work on, but also the way that they enjoy working, so it was really specific to them. It had in-depth questions in this parkour, so it allowed me to understand what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And also there was a couple with injuries, so I was able to see what needed improving, but also the adaptations I needed to make, and any barriers that were there that would have to be avoided in order for the participants to be able to take part. So from the clients, I found out that I should have kind of got feedback in a better way. So after the session, perhaps I could have seen how it had affected them, like maybe a week afterwards if they'd carried on doing these sessions to see if it had benefited them. And also this could be done through a questionnaire, so I could have then asked things and then altered them if I was to do the session again. However, when at the end of the session, through talking to a few of the participants, I did find out that it was very beneficial, but this could have been done in a more formal way. So the different speeds of the fartlek training is the reason behind why I did this, because doing a continuous session, working on cardiovascular endurance is obviously a long and repetitive session, and given the space that I had, it was going to be more beneficial to have variation. I also had competition within it, so they were working in pairs and doing the sprint as a competitive thing to make them really motivate themselves and motivate each other to want to carry on rather than starting to lose interest and not working to their full potential, which obviously then is not hitting the cardiovascular endurance specific that I wanted. So this competition really helped to then up the game and to make it work on cardiovascular endurance. So there was a very high intensity during the majority of this session. So the sprint was to start, and then they jogged and then walked, and as soon as they got back with their partner, they both started again. So the walks were the recovery period, so there wasn't any standing around doing nothing. So this really increased the intensity, even though it was over short spells of the sprint. By having other sessions, so if this was a continuous thing, the distance would be increased for the sprint and the walk and the jog would be decreased to make sure the intensity does keep progressing to help improve the cardiovascular endurance by having more higher intense activity. So the reason for having the shorter sprints to start with is because we're going to work on cardiovascular endurance, so we don't want to start with a really long period which creates boredom. So we had the short sprints which were repeated more often. So the key elements that I found to my session were the fact that there was no risks involved due to the prior checks I'd had, and it would be able to progress. So to include progression towards cardiovascular endurance for the participants, and also the objective of what I had for the session was achieved because all participants came out saying that they felt they had worked on their cardiovascular endurance. And then this allows for us to then develop in for the next session. To do the session again, perhaps there could be a different kind of rapport just due to the conditions. some of the participants were unfamiliar with some of the things, so there was like limited amounts of that. In order for me to improve, there were different ways I could do this. So I could focus on key parts and possibly take a new qualification, such as a level 2 fitness, to help me understand some more principles that I could follow, or another sports qualification. So the training program, the way it was done, it allowed for enough time for both clients that I had and for all commitments that they prior had to still be fulfilled, and for the session not to overrun these. So the benefits of the session. So client 2 had a knee injury and wanted to get back into exercise. It was not a threatening injury, but something that would need slow progression back to full strength. So having background checks and everything like that, I knew what the kind of circumstances were. So I did a few sessions to allow enough time to still have commitments with his family, but to allow for the progression on the knee, but not too often, because that would have caused, again, another injury. Client 1 was able to improve on all of his targets due to progressing every session, because this really helped him build up the strength. The participants both were pleased because they'd set their goals, they knew where they wanted to get, and they were working and chipping away at that goal. So before I planned the session, we had a screening. So I had a questionnaire of different things I needed to know, finding out the motives of what they wanted to do and why they wanted to do it. So client 2, he wanted to get back into his sport after his injury, so that was his motivation, to get back to the state where he knew that he could work and his knee wasn't going to give him any trouble. And some of the activities he liked, so we excluded a continuous run because he doesn't find this interesting, although we did include possibly going swimming, so that's something that he had more of a liking to. And he had more of ability to do that because of the knee injury. He found that if he went swimming, he would have had a higher ability because he wouldn't have to stop because of the non-weight bearing activity. And as I said, by having less activities over the course of the week, allowed him to still carry on with his other activities. Whereas client 1 had different motives. He wanted to get stronger, and that was what he wanted to achieve. So he had that own personal aim that he wanted to reach, and that's why we really focused on that, and using some of the likes that he wanted to make him more engaged and wanted to achieve.